The song starts softly. Then the beat hits. For a moment, everyone moves the same way. Different lives. Different stories. One sound. That was the power of Wilson Pickett. In a country still learning how to sit in the same room, his voice made people stand together. No speeches. No slogans. Just music. But behind that sound was a man constantly at war. With money. With trust. With the people closest to him. And eventually, with himself. He did not come from privilege. He came from survival. From cotton fields, church hymns, and the kind of hunger that teaches you to strike first. That instinct never left him. As his records climbed the charts, his anger climbed with them. Success brought attention. Attention brought pressure. And pressure exposed every crack that had been there since childhood. Some artists learned how to carry fame. Others let it carry them somewhere dangerous. Wilson Pickett did not want to be controlled. By labels. By managers. By contracts he did not understand and never fully trusted. The voice kept opening doors. The man kept slamming them shut. This is not a story about excuses. And it is not a story about erasing damage. It is the story of how a voice helped shape American soul music, while the man behind it slowly unraveled in front of the world. And once you see both sides, the music hits differently. Before the records, before the suits, before the stage lights, life was about staying alive. Wilson Pickett was born in Prattville, Alabama, a place where opportunity did not knock. You went looking for it. Or you went hungry. He grew up surrounded by noise, not music. Arguments. Hard labor. The quiet fear of not having enough. Church was the only space where his voice mattered more than his fists. His grandfather preached. The hymns were strict, disciplined, controlled. But Wilson was none of those things. Even as a child, he carried tension in his body. He fought on the way to school. He fought on the way home. When food was scarce, he disappeared into the woods with a rifle, returning days later with whatever he could bring back. Survival came first. Trust came last. That survival mindset shaped everything that followed. He learned early that no one was going to protect him. So he protected himself. When he left Alabama for Detroit in the mid-1950s, it was not just a move. It was an escape. Detroit was loud, electric, alive with possibility. Music floated through neighborhoods the way heat rises off pavement. At Northwestern High School, the hallways were filled with future legends, though no one used that word yet. Songwriters. Voices. Dreamers. Everyone chasing something better. Wilson started in gospel groups, singing alongside people tied to C.L. Franklin's church and a teenage Aretha Franklin. The talent was obvious. So was the impatience. He began to question the church. Not the music, but the people. Singing praise on Sunday. Living reckless by Saturday night. If the rules were already broken, he saw no reason to stay loyal to them. That shift led him into secular music and eventually into the Falcons. It was not a smooth entry. Some members resisted him. Too intense. Too dark-skinned. Too unpredictable. But once he took the lead, resistance faded. I found a love, introduced his voice to the world. Not smooth. Not polished. But urgent. Demanding attention. Audiences reacted immediately. Industry insiders took notes. And rivals started watching closely. Wilson Pickett had found his lane. But he had also brought his past with him. The hunger. The suspicion. The need to stay in control. Those traits helped him rise. And they would one day help pull him apart. Fame did not surprise him. It confirmed what he already believed. When Wilson Pickett stepped into the national spotlight, he did not arrive as a student. He arrived as a force. By the early 1960s, the industry had learned something important. This voice could not be softened. It had to be unleashed. Atlantic Records understood that quickly. Pickett was not interested in crossover polish or radio-friendly restraint. He wanted records that sounded like sweat, urgency, and confrontation. Music that did not sit still. The breakthrough came fast. 6345789 announced his presence with authority. Then, in the midnight hour, changed the rules. That record did more than climb charts. It rewired dance floors across America. Black crowds, white crowds, side by side, moving to the same pulse. Pickett took pride in that power. Not as a symbol. As control. On stage, he dictated the energy. Off stage, he demanded loyalty. His band learned quickly that excellence was not optional. It was survival. When he worked with the musicians at Stax Records in Memphis, the chemistry was immediate. No ego in the room could overpower the music. The sound was sharp, raw, undeniable. But power never likes to share space. When industry politics ended that collaboration, Pickett moved to famed studios in Muscle Shoals. The location changed. The dominance did not. Land of 1,000 Dances pushed him higher on the pop charts than ever before. It became unavoidable. A song that refused to age. With success came expansion. Albums. Tours. Television appearances. Global recognition. But success also hardened his instincts. He watched contracts closely, even when he could not fully read them. He trusted cash more than paper. Fear of being cheated became a constant companion. Then came the Soul Clan. A bold idea led by top black artists who wanted ownership, investment, and long-term power. The industry listened. And then quietly shut it down. Pickett noticed. He never forgot. By the late 1960s, he had everything an artist could want. Hits. Money. Influence. And yet peace never entered the picture. The voice remained unmatched. But control was slipping into obsession. Because when power is built on survival, it does not know how to rest. Power can protect you. But it can also isolate you. For Wilson Pickett, control had always meant safety. Growing up poor taught him one lesson early. If you don't stay in charge, you get hurt. As the years passed, that instinct turned into obsession. Money was everywhere. Trust was nowhere. Pickett stopped believing anyone around him had clean intentions. Managers. Promoters. Even his own band. Every mistake felt personal. Every disagreement felt like betrayal. Alcohol entered the picture slowly. Cocaine followed. Together, they stripped away what little restraint he had left. On stage, he was still electric. Off stage, he was unpredictable. Band members learned to read his mood before reading the music. A missed note could end a job. Or start a fight. Labels began to see him differently. Not as a legend. But as a risk. When Atlantic Records finally ended the relationship, Pickett took it as confirmation of his worst fears. He believed the system was against him. And once that belief settled in, it never left. RCA offered money but not understanding. The hits slowed. The frustration grew louder. Then came the incidents that changed how the industry viewed him forever. Gunfire. Arrests. Public confrontations that no press release could soften. In Las Vegas, the money flowed fast. So did the drugs. Residencies paid well, but the nights blurred together. Arguments turned physical. Threats became routine. Friends distanced themselves. Employees quit. The circle around him shrank to people who either feared him or enabled him. Motown gave him another chance in the late 1980s. For a moment, it looked like redemption. Then the same patterns returned. Violence. Tour cancellations. Fear in places that should have felt professional. The breaking point came in 1992. Driving drunk, Pickett struck an elderly pedestrian. The man later died from his injuries. There was no escaping that moment. No stage. No music. No explanation. Pickett went to prison. Rehabilitation followed. For the first time, control was taken away completely. When he came out, the world felt colder. The industry had moved on. His body had begun to fail. And the power he once wielded no longer answered to him. The voice was still there. But the man behind it was unraveling. By the time the chaos became public, America had already made up its mind. The music stayed. The man became complicated. For many listeners, Wilson Pickett was frozen in time. A voice on the radio. A memory tied to youth, movement, and moments that felt simpler. But outside the speakers, the story was harder to hold. In the United States, the media struggled with the contradiction. How do you celebrate a pioneer of soul music while reporting on arrests, violence, and addiction? There was no easy narrative. So most outlets chose distance. Radio continued to play the records. Promoters became cautious. Insurance companies raised concerns. Behind the scenes, decisions were made quietly. International audiences saw him differently. At events like the Soul to Soul concert in Ghana, he represented something larger than himself. A connection between African heritage and Black American expression. There, the voice mattered more than the past. But even that admiration had limits. As years passed, newer sounds replaced the old. The industry shifted. Legacy acts were expected to behave, not explode. Pickett did not adapt easily. The discipline that younger artists were taught never reached him. No one had prepared him for longevity. Among older fans, especially in Black communities, the feelings were mixed. Pride in what he helped build. Pain in how it fell apart. Recognition that talent alone does not protect you. By the 1990s, he was spoken about more in reflection than anticipation. A legend whose best days were behind him. A warning whispered among musicians coming up after him. Yet when his songs played, something remarkable still happened. People listened. They smiled. They moved. The world had separated the art from the damage, not to excuse it, but to survive it. And in that separation, his place in history became clear. Not perfect. Not erased. But undeniable. In the end, there was no fight left. The anger had burned too long. The body could no longer keep up with the voice. Years of cocaine and alcohol had weakened everything inside him. Diabetes. Kidney disease. A heart that had been pushed far beyond its limits. The man who once terrified rooms now struggled to move through his own house. Family members stepped in when they realized silence could be fatal. There were days when he lay alone, unable to answer the phone, unable to stand. No stage. No audience. Only the quiet consequences of a life lived at full volume. On January 19, 2006, Wilson Pickett died of a heart attack. He was 64 years old. There were no headlines screaming chaos this time. Just the closing of a chapter many people did not know how to revisit. But history has a way of slowing down. After his death, the conversation changed. The industry began to look back instead of away. Awards followed. His recordings were preserved. In the Midnight Hour was recognized not just as a hit, but as a cultural artifact, something worth protecting for generations that never saw him live. He was inducted into halls of fame. His influence traced through artists who learned how to scream emotion into a microphone without apology. Still, his legacy remains unresolved. Not broken. Not clean. But honest. He helped define American soul music. He helped bring people together through sound. And he showed painfully what happens when trauma goes untreated and power has no boundaries. When his music plays now, listeners do not think about contracts or courtrooms. They remember where they were, who they were with, what that voice meant in their lives. And maybe that is how history finally finds balance. The man did not survive himself, but the music did. If this story made you reconsider a song you thought you already knew, share that moment below. And if you believe some legends deserve to be remembered with truth, not excuses, not erasure, you already understand why this story still matters.